Hello everybody, welcome to my channel and welcome to this tutorial or process video for the TV boxes I made for the Spooky Inspiration Hop on YouTube. And I'm going to be showing you the process of how I make this smaller box, and the larger box I've already made and I'll just have to talk you through that one. So I purchased this file from the Silhouette store, and so I will put a link to that below. So I sized this box to fit this particular image. So the first thing that I did was keeping all of the items grouped together in the design space. I enlarged this frame from this inside edge to this inside edge to 4 inches. Now the image here is 4 1/4 by 3 3/4, but I needed the opening to be 1/4 of an inch smaller because I need that 1/4 of an inch to be able to glue the paper underneath the opening on the inside of the box. And I feel like if the opening is really close to the size of the paper, that you just run that risk of the paper popping through the opening. And also, as you're enlarging the opening, you just need to make sure that you're keeping your ratio. In other words, you're enlarging the width and the height at the same time. So, and the third thing that you need to consider is the total size of your photograph. This opening being 4 inches wide, I almost maxed out the file on the 12 by 12 sheet of paper, so you can't get much larger than this. I hope that helps. I will give you the width and the height if you just want to go ahead and size your box to what I have done. That will be very helpful for you as you follow the tutorial, because I will give you all the sizes as I go. And so this one is, to have a box this size, it's 19.685 and the height is 16.178. And the smaller TV box, I just stayed with the default setting, so I didn't decrease or enlarge the size in any way. So everything you see here is cut out of 3 sheets of 8.5 by 11 paper in 110-pound weight. And the large TV, the box is cut out of 2 12 by 12 sheets, and I did not have 110-pound in that size, so I just used an 80-pound weight of a really good linen cardstock. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut an opening in my design paper for the front of the box. And so I need to measure the space in between these score lines here. And I want a piece that's about a 1/16 of an inch offset. And so for the small TV, that's 4 3/4 by 3 3/8. So I'm going to cut 2 of these, one for the front, one for the back. And then on the large TV, you're going to cut 2 pieces that are 6 5/8 by 4 3/4. So what I did for the large TV is I just centered the piece on the front of the box here, and make sure that your orientation is correct, top, bottom. And I just took some washi tape and taped this down. And then I turned it over and I traced along this opening here. Now, because this is so dark back here, I think I'm going to do this a little bit different. I'm just going to take this and, keep it in the same orientation, flip it over. I'm going to center it in between the score lines if I can see them. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and tape this down it over. And then I'm just going to take my pencil and trace. What I do is I'm just poking a hole in the center, and I'm just going to do a rough cut. I'm not going to try and cut it exactly until I've cut out more out of the center here. Okay, so now I'm just going to do a more detailed cut around that line, and I'm going to fast forward so you don't have to endure watching me cut this out. Okay, so now I've got my opening cut out, and I'm going to go ahead and ink the edges, and then I'm going to glue this down here, and then I'll go from there. Alright, so I've got my two box pieces glued together. I was going to show you that on camera, and I looked up and I wasn't recording. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's been a long night. So basically, you had your little tab here. I don't know if you can see that, the tab on the right, that was on the right here. I just put glue on that and then set this piece over it. You just want to make sure you don't go over the score line. And then now I'm going to go ahead and ink my pieces and then glue them on. So the sides here are 2 3/8, and you might have to trim that down a little bit. And then the height is 3 3/8. And on the large TV, the sides are 3 1/4 by 4 3/4. Alright, so what I did is I cut 5/8 of an inch off of this striped paper. I glued the larger portion onto this black cardstock, and then the smaller strip I placed here on the bottom and put the colored lines underneath the white lines, and I think that's going to give it more of a test screen look. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this onto the inside of the box. Alright, I've got my image here, and I did have to trim the top of that piece off because it was getting too close to the score line, and I really don't want my lid knot to be able to fold over. So I got that glued in, and then I put a piece of washi tape along the middle of the fold here, and then again here on the middle of this fold, because I feel like this lid's going to be open and shut a lot, and I just want to make sure that it's really secure and not going to rip. And then I went ahead and glued these 3 pieces onto the inner part of the box, just making sure that, you know, this is the top and the tabs are on the bottom. And then this piece, I have to wait until the box is put together before I can glue this one in here. I do want to mention that on the large TV that I put the box together first, and then because I'd used the lighter weight paper, I went ahead and added an extra layer of the cardstock, and then I added more of the design paper on the inside. And then I also recommend that you put the side pieces in first before you put in the bottom. So you can see on this one I've got the decorative paper on the bottom as well, but I think on the smaller TV I'm just going to put a black piece of cardstock on the bottoms. Okay, so I have that remaining side piece in and some black cardstock on the bottom to cover up those tabs. And now I want to put magnets on to hold the lid in place. And as I was putting the box together, that's when it hit me that I should have waited to put this back piece on. So I will edit that in somewhere when I'm putting the box together, not to put this on yet. Um, anyway, so I'll go ahead and put those in, and I put 2 sets on, not all the way to the ends, but I didn't just want one in the middle. I wanted that lid to really stay in place where I want it to be, because it kind of wants to go off to one side a little bit. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is place a piece of paper over this magnet and a piece of adhesive backing, and then I'm going to go ahead and snap that magnet in place. And then add my glue. Then I'm going to make sure this lid is lined up. Then I'm going to hold down that paper and lift up the lid, and that should keep the magnet in place. And I've got a little bit of excess glue. Typically I wouldn't care because I would tape over that and then cover it with the design paper, but dang it. I'm just going to have to let that dry before I can put the other one on now. Well, I finally got the other magnet on and it's looking good. So the next thing I want to do is add these pieces here, and I've cut out 6. On your file, when you download it, it's only going to have the 2, so I had to duplicate the other 4. And so I'm going to glue 3 together for each side. So I did the same thing on the large TV, and I really think it's important that you use 110-pound cardstock for this step. You just want really nice sturdy base to hold your TV up. So now you can see I have the piece on each side, and then the 4th layer is the design paper. So I'm going to go ahead and glue mine together and I'll be back. Okay, gluing on the other side sometimes can be a bit trickier because I want to make sure that the box is setting level, and so I'm going to go ahead and add my glue, but then I'm going to I think I'm going to use this glue. That'll give me a little bit more time to move it around in case I need to adjust it. So what I mean by that is if it's not setting level, then I will just scooch up one side just a smidge or something. I just want to make sure it sets level. So, and I'm only putting glue on this top edge here. So I'm just testing it now to make sure that it's not leaning one way or the other. Okay. So on this particular TV, I'm not even sure I want to cover this with design paper. It might look cute just in the black, so I'll decide that at the end, probably when I get everything else on, and we'll see how that goes. Alright, so I placed design paper on my lid, and the measurements are 2 3/8 by 4 3/4, and then this part here is 3/4 of an inch by 4 3/4. same for underneath. And just keep in mind your orientation when you're placing the paper on. And so for the large TV, you've got 3 1/4 by 6 5/8, and this is 1 1/8 by 6 5/8. And I just did the same pattern on the lid here. And so now we need to start adding all the little fun bits and pieces. So I decided against a shaker because all the bits and pieces were covering up this bottom part here where I went to so much trouble to make it look like a test screen. So I went ahead and cut a piece of acetate anyway. I just think it gives it more of a look of a TV. And for the measurements on that, they are on 1/16 inch hash marks. So the width is in between 3 1/8 and 3 1/4, and the height is in between 2 1/2 and 2 5/8. And then I angled the corners so they wouldn't peek out from underneath the rounded corners of the frame. And then I just glued the vent piece here. And on the large TV, I cut the frame out of this dark wood grain paper, as well as these pieces here, front and back. And then I also used that wood grain paper on this vent here. Now the vent I also cut out of the 110-pound black cardstock, and I glued those together. This inner frame here, I just, in my design space, I sized it down about 1/8 of an inch from the original, and then I cut that out on 110-pound cardstock. I sprayed it with a champagne silver by Design Master, and that's the color that I also used on the knobs. To make the knobs for both the large and the small TV, the process starts out the same. So the first thing I did was to cut out these little tiny pieces here, and what they are the fallout from these knobs here. But of course I needed more than the 2 from what I originally cut. And so what I did is, in my design space, I took one of these knobs and I isolated the center by hitting release compound path, and then I was able to remove that piece from the circle. And then what I did was I duplicated it so that I would have a total of 6, so 3 for each knob. And then you just glue these 3 together. These 3 are already glued together. And then you're going to glue this piece onto the solid circle like that. Then you need to cut 2 pieces from your design paper, 1 for each knob, then glue them to your stack. And then you're just going to glue your stacked pieces into that little slot there. And so I don't know if you can see right there that those are glued into that little slot. And then what I did is I punched a couple of smaller circles than this one out of some scrap 110-pound paper, and then I glued those together, glued them to the back of the knob, and then glued them onto the TV. And on the large TV, same thing, except that I cut out 24 total of these little pieces, 12 for each knob, glued them all together, and then instead of gluing this piece onto just one circle, I glued it onto 2 of these. And then once that was glued together, then I glued in my little center stack of 12 pieces, and then I spray painted the entire thing in the champagne silver. Then I punched a couple smaller circles and glued them to the back just like I did on this one, and then just glued the whole thing down onto the TV. Okay, so the only thing I have left to do is to make the antenna for the small TV, but first I'm going to show you what I did to make the large one. And I started off with these styrofoam balls. And this is the smooth styrofoam, not the rough stuff. And I got these at Hobby Lobby, where all the styrofoam is, and it's, even though it's cut in half, it's still too large for what I needed, and so I needed to cut at least 3/4 of this off. And so I've got about, it's a little over 3/4, not quite an inch. And what I did is, with my knife, not these scissors, I ran along and scored and tried to keep it even from that edge, or the same distance from this edge, and just made a circle score line here so I'd know where to cut. And then I just took a very large knife, and I didn't try to slice it once all the way through. There's no way that was going to happen without maybe injuring myself. And so what I did is I just stuck it in and then pulled it out, and then moved the ball, rotated it, and then stuck the knife in again, and just kept sticking further and further each time. And I didn't want to cut myself, so just be very careful and very patient when you do that. And then eventually I cut it all the way through, and it was still a bit jagged on the bottom. So I just took my knife and tried to, like you would a cake, you know, when you're slicing the top off the cake, I just tried to slice the bottom off the styrofoam ball, and then I sanded it as smooth as possible. But even though I did that, I'd still have these little holes on the edges, because these pressed styrofoam balls are just mainly, well, that's what they are, little tiny styrofoam balls that are pressed together. And so some of the little balls would come off the edge when you cut it. So what I did is I measured the bottom, and at this point with this cut off, it was 2.5 inches. Then I cut that 2.5 out of 110-pound cardstock and glued it to the bottom. But I had those little jagged edges still. And what I was able to do with that paper being there was I was able to take some modeling paste and then just run that over the edges and smooth them up, and then just try to fill in between this dome and the edge of the paper. Just for demonstration purposes, I wanted to show you what I did. So I've got the paper underneath there, and I'm just going to fill in the gaps with the modeling paste. So I'm just taking my finger and rubbing the modeling paste along the edges, and so it's just filling in those gaps just to make it smooth all the way flat to the bottom where the paper is. So and I don't know if you can see that, but now there's no gap, it'll just fill in all the holes and make it look smooth and even. Now the rabbit ears are made from these little treat sticks, and I get these at Walmart. There's 50 in a package. They're 4 inches, and I just used I cut out one of the antennas out of the paper just for a guideline and sizing. I did it where I stuck these in and glued them and then stuck on the beads, but I recommend that you put the beads on first. And you're probably wondering, what in the heck do I need beads for? It's going to be covered up with tin foil. Well, this is true, but I was just afraid that as I was shaping the tin foil over the antenna, that it would just not work right if I didn't have something round there to give it that look. So I have these wooden beads. They're very lightweight, and they do have a large opening, and so I kind of had to force that stick in there and kind of force that opening to be a little bit wider, but I was able to do that. And I Didn't stick it all the way down, but just it's in there about halfway. So anyway, you want to put your beads on first. I didn't even need to glue them because like you just saw how tight that is. They're not coming off. And so I just poked a hole about, I want to say there's about a 3/8 of an inch, half an inch in the middle there between the holes. And then I stuck it in deep enough so I could get about a half an inch in there. So once I was happy with the placement of my rabbit ears, then I removed them and put glue in the holes and then glued them in place. And once the glue was dry, then I went and added modeling paste to fill any gaps where the stick was inside the hole. And then once the modeling paste was dry, then I went ahead and spray painted that entire thing with this chrome colored bright silver paint, spray paint. So then once that was dry, then I took, and it didn't take much aluminum foil. I mean, maybe a square about that big, like maybe a 4-inch square is that? I don't know. And then I just, with the shiny side out, I just folded that over and, you know, just scrunched it tight on the bottom, like I would have maybe if I was trying to do that. I remember when we were little, we did do this. Oh my gosh, that's how old I am. Anyway, so for this antenna, I cut 3 of these with the 110-pound cardstock, and then on 2 of them, I cut off the tab at the score line here, and then I cut 1 piece out of the design paper, and then also cut this off at the score line, and then I've glued all 3 together, the 2 cardstock pieces and the design paper. And so then I'm just going to glue these onto this 3rd cardstock piece, and then obviously I'm going to be leaving the tab on this one so I can glue it here on top of my TV. Alright, thanks for hanging in there with me and watching this tutorial. I hope it was helpful, and if you do have any questions or concerns about making your own TV box, please leave a comment below and I will try to answer as best I can. And also, if you have not seen the YouTube Pop video, make sure you check out the link below, and there will be a full lineup on that video of all the designers that participated in the hop. There are prizes to be given away, so make sure that you follow all the rules on that to be eligible to win. And you have until September 17th, 2021 to respond and comment and subscribe. So, and speaking of subscribing, I would love to have you join me for my upcoming videos, so make sure you hit that notification bell. And I would absolutely love it if you would give me a like and that thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated. And so yeah, I think that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and start decorating these boxes, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.